Hello, and welcome to Pop Culture Yearbook, a show where we talk about a year between 1980 and 2020, so far anyway, and discuss pieces of pop culture that each guest has chosen from that year and dig into them and have fun with them. I'm your host, Brad.
I'm Pete.
And today we have a special guest. We're going to talk about 1994, which was a big year for us. And our guest ties into that year better than anybody. You want to introduce yourself, Giff?
Hi, this is Brian Gifford. Happy to be here joining the two of you on this very important year for all three of us, 1994. When I think about 1994, I always split it into two separate sections. The first section, which encompassed high school for both of us, or for all three of us, and then moving off to college in the second half of the year.
So we discussed having guests on, and we figured this was a great year to have Giff on because he's one of our dearest friends, but we all graduated together, and we know that he would have some good stories to include. So
Absolutely.
That's why he's here, and this is a great way to introduce him to our world.
Well, happy to be here, fellas.
Awesome. All right, Giff, continue on with what you wanted to say. So anyway, we always start by talking about what the year meant to us. And as you already brought up, this was a big year because we had kind of two things going on. But Gifford, why don't you continue and tell us more about 1994 for you?
Well, 1994 for me started off with being on the basketball team. I sat the end of the bench, usually next to Brad and Pete, who were spectators at the time, and I had a great time sitting on the end of the bench. I always said that I had a free ride and a front row seat to all the games. Senior year, I did lead the team in warm-up points, but I believe on the program, beside number 10, it just said player to be named later.
Was that your number 10?
Number 10 was my number.
Wow,
Yes,
I don't remember
absolutely.
that.
I don't think I ever.
It doesn't seem like the right number for you either.
What seems like the right
Whoa,
number?
what maybe like 55 or something.
I was a no. I had a number in the low numbers because I was such an integral part of the team. So my number reflected that.
I love that you brought that up because what a great memory the basketball season was, and I'd kind of left that out of my thoughts, and so you're already paying dividends here because I'm already
that was a tough year because
reliving those great drips we took and sitting on the end of the bench. Even though we weren't players, we were right there with you the whole time.
We were just fans, and I remember sitting right next to you. I got a warning from the ref once. Do you remember that? Because I was yelling from the bench. I was just a fan, but sitting right next to you, who was on the team, and I'm yelling at the ref and everything. The ref gave me a warning and threatened to tee me up. The next day, the basketball coach, Mr. Riley, actually thanked me because I was saying things that he wanted to say, but he couldn't because he was the coach.
We were hardcore fans.
Oh, absolutely. Who had the basketball helmet?
That was me and Pete.
That was the three
Haken.
of us. It was Haken. The two of us and Haken.
Okay,
that's right.
And that was I think that was earlier, like when we were sophomores. But yes, we did paint and carve basketballs and wore them as helmets, as they used to do at times, and that was a wonderful.
We may have to find that picture, Brad.
We have a picture. Oh, I've got it. We've got that picture somewhere, but we might have to save it for the right year. Sorry, Giff. Continue on.
You guys didn't ever paint your chest, did you?
Not yet.
No, not.
I did for this show.
We did. No, I don't think. Well, Pete, I know, Pete, you painted your face, though, didn't you?
Haken and I did,
you had it way, so dark and crazy, it looked...
We painted our faces in the car. You were driving. Haken and I were in the back seat, painting each other's faces. And we were just, throwing globs and globs of paint on.
It looked
no artwork
bad
at all. Yeah, it did look pretty bad in retrospect.
Well,
what else you got, Giff?
As the year progressed, couple memories. Prom was a big one. I had a lot of fun with that. Pop's concert in the spring was always a big deal for choir kids and band kids. And actually, you could do pretty much anything. You could do skits or anything you could sign up to do. My best performance ever as a singer was with Laura Anderson and Ryan Hummel doing our rendition of "Lean on Me." Laura was kind enough to play the piano, and I don't know how she kept up with us because Hummel and I were singing way too fast. But that was one of my great memories of the Pops concert. And then, of course, Borman's year-end party. We all remember Chad Borman's year-end party after school year was over.
And how?
Yeah, absolutely. And then at our graduation, I did do the welcome speech. I don't know if you remember me doing that.
Wow, I don't remember that. Although I kind of do know that you say it, but barely.
I don't remember what I said, but I know I have the program, and I did the welcome speech.
I also gave a speech.
Well, you're the class president.
That's right.
Pretty much need to,
I just sat there.
But the thing that I remember, as far as the end of the first part of '94, was after graduation. I had gone. I think, did we have to turn our caps and gowns in or something after graduation? And I walked back down the ramp towards the gym, and everybody was gone at that point, and the lights were out. And I stepped into the gym, and after 4 years, that place was my life. Like I didn't see people that much outside of school until I got my license, of course, then I could drive around. But I felt in that moment that just like that, whereas an hour before we were at graduation, kings of the school, but in that moment with the lights off and everybody gone, I already felt like I was no longer supposed to be there. So I thought that was an interesting way to go
deep,
on to the second part of 1994.
Where did you feel like you were supposed to be?
It just didn't feel like I was supposed. I didn't belong at the high school anymore. Like now I was supposed to move on and go on to other things.
You became aloof and were looking down at the puny little high school kids.
Oh,
now.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I'm just kidding.
So those are a couple of the memories of the first half of '94 for me, anyway.
Okay, well, I'm really glad you went first because most of my notes I wrote down college stuff, and I'm going to save that for our future episodes. One thing I had forgot to mention in the intro is we're going to, at least for this year, for sure, we're going to split up our format just a little bit. So instead of putting together a ridiculously long podcast, we're going to have 4 smaller episodes where each one focuses on one thing that we discuss. So we can save some of what we want to say for later. So I'm going to save that college stuff. But when I think to high school, because that's where I wanted to start anyway today, the basketball season is just a great memory. You just totally nailed that. So I was a basketball player, and it was like, after golf, my favorite sport. And I tried really hard to be a good basketball player. And after my sophomore year, I just decided I'd rather be a fan, even though I love to play, and I still am a driveway champion. But I found that we could have just as much fun. So I had Pete, who's on this podcast, our friend Griebel, our friend Haken, and then kind of by chance, my great friend Joe also, who was also a basketball player, but unfortunately got cut for reasons that I might have contributed to in his senior year, which was sad. But he then became part of our traveling party too that year, and we just had a awesome time driving to the games. Because of course by this time we have driver's licenses and we're listening to music and just going nuts on the way to the games. And the team was pretty good. You guys did a pretty good job. It was a really entertaining year. So that really was like my favorite memory.
Quick side note on Joe. In my mind, I was going to get cut.
Well, that's what you've always said. That's what, yeah.
So I would have been there with you instead of Joe.
Right. And either way, it would have been great. But,
right.
You know, so anyway, yeah, that was how that all went down. But my other big memory, of course, so I was a golfer, and that was my number one sport. And so as a senior, I kind of struggled through the year, and I was kind of disappointed with how I played, and I didn't do a whole lot of good stuff. But at the end of the year, when we had our conference tournament, I put it all together, and I won it. And then when we had our section tournament, I won that too. And I remember my dad driving, and I didn't know he was coming, and he showed up like on the 18th green, and he was standing there watching. He was driving a van doing, like, he delivered candy for Pete's parents. on this route that he did, and he found his way to the golf course where we were playing that day, and that was really nice to see him there because I didn't expect it. Not like he got to see me play the whole day, but he was there, and it was pretty cool. And then, so I made the section tournament, and I came 2 strokes away from going to the state, which was my ultimate goal. And that's my biggest regret, is that I had one really bad hole that really ruined it that day. But otherwise, I actually turned it around and had a great back 9 and gave myself a chance, but I didn't quite do it. So,
what did you shoot to get to sections?
I shot an 82, but I shot 44 on the front 9, and then I shot a 38 on the back 9, and I had a hole where I had 2 penalty strokes, and so that's how that went. I'll talk more about golf when I get to the college thing too, because that was part of my issue with my rough start to college that I'm going to save for a different one. But so yeah, and then you brought up prom, and prom was way fun. It was a really good spring that year. It was a fun finish to high school. I've always felt a little bit not so much like I fit in with like the older kids at our school and was very uncomfortable around other people. But when we were the seniors, I always loved my class. I felt like we were a really close class, and it was a great way to go out. So
we really did have a great class.
Yeah, it was a lot of
think that there's nobody in the class at the time that I could say, man, I hate that guy or whatever. But it really was. It was a lot of fun. Just a lot of great people in our class. Small class. But
so I think I'll save the rest for later, but I'll focus on those positives for today. And finishing high school was really great. And Gifford, you helped me remember a few things that I didn't have really prepared. So thank you. So Pete's going to be the one that we focus on today. So it's his choice we're going to talk about. So we'll turn it over to Pete to talk about his 94, and then he can lead us into his choice for discussion.
Well, one thing, you brought up a lot of the same memories that I have for obvious reasons, but I do want to call out that because this is a pop culture show, just some of the music that we listened to on the way to those basketball games. Oh, yeah. More often than not, Brad, you're the driver and you control the music, and what a great job you did. You made us fall in love with so much music, in particular REM. Superman was the one that was a staple as we were going to all of these. Yes, just fantastic. And I just remember always like just screaming at the top of our lungs to that and Nirvana and just a lot of other great music.
Pearl Jam, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Well, this was the year that you and
driver didn't have that good of a music selection. The basketball team. Perry didn't have a good ear for that stuff.
This was the year, Brad, that you introduced us to the Jayhawks. And Gifford, I don't think you were on this trip, but we went to. It was a big deal when you're from a small town in Southwest Minnesota. It's about a 3.5-hour drive to get to Minneapolis, and we took a road trip. What was it? 5 of us. Brad, was it Haken and Griebel and Hummel?
No, I don't think Hummel. I think he went on a different trip when we went to a
different one. Okay. But we came up and we went to a concert that was the Jayhawks and Johnny Cash, and what a great weekend that was. Was that the weekend that we lost you at the Mall of America, Brad?
I don't know. We might have gone there the day on our way out.
Well, there's the one day that like we lost you right away after being there.
Well, I'm sure I was really happy about that, huh?
You don't remember this at all?
Not really.
So we're shopping at the mall, and I'm pretty sure this was the trip because it was just Haken and Griebel, and it was like not long after the mall had opened, so we didn't know it as well as we do, as well as we would now. Nobody had cell phones, anything like that back in those days, and we were there for maybe 15 minutes. One of the first stores that we went to, I think it was like a Champs Sports store, and I just turned around. I thought you and I were together and you were like behind me or something. I turned around, you were just gone. And then, so I walked around the store for a little bit. I came out, I found Haken and Griebel. I'm like, where's Brad? You guys seen Brad? And they're all like, no. I'm like, uh-oh. Well, we hung around this store for about a half an hour. And you were obviously
I vaguely remember like standing up by like where it was at Oshman Sports Store. That's kind of, and like on the Nordstrom end over there. I feel like I remember standing up there waiting, and maybe that's what I'm remembering. And I don't know how we ever would have found each other. I must have just stood there and waited because that must have been around where we came in from parking.
Well, how we found each other was that we didn't know what to do. We just walked around the mall for like it had to have been 2 or 3 hours. We were just like looking for you. It's like, well, we're never going to find him. So then we just decided to go back to the car, and you were sitting in the car. You had been sitting in the car, and you were just pissed off as hell. You thought we had like ditched you or something. And then the whole ride home was just like really, really awkward. But
I can totally picture that one.
I can't believe you don't remember it. I remember it like it was yesterday. But
But yeah, so we saw the Jayhawks at the Orpheum Theater and Johnny Cash. It was pretty great, and that was like our first like real outing to the big city on our own without parents, and
that was
going to a real concert, and so it was a great weekend.
Yes, absolutely. I actually remember we played a lot of church league softball. Gifford, you played in that same league for a different church, right? And Brad was on our team, and that was just so much fun, like all through high school. That's what I enjoyed doing because there really wasn't much else going on in town, and it was just something that was always a lot of fun to do. I remember kind of having that same feeling that you described, Gifford, like the last game, because I knew it was like right before I was going to go to college. Is like, okay, I'm probably never going to play this again, because we played so much baseball and softball, just in our backyard, from just going down with a few balls and playing catch or whatever. This is probably the last time I was going to do anything like that. I just kind of remember having that same feeling of nostalgia, I guess. But and that was probably like in that August time frame. But then, yeah, I do remember being really excited to be going up to college. Backing up a little bit, I remember the day is just one of those. Where were you when you found out about moments? I remember back in August, August, what was it, April or May? Well, I remember finding out about Kurt Cobain's death. That was April, I think, right?
April 5th.
Yeah.
April 5th, yes. And it was on the way actually to do a campus visit at Mankato, because that's where I was considering going. Mankato State University, which is now Minnesota State University, in southern Minnesota. And my that's right. My dad actually had heard about it before I did. He woke up and saw the news, and he was the one that told me about it because he knew I was a big fan. And but we'll talk about Nirvana a little bit more in a bit, but I do want to get into
who I was with, because I feel like I remember getting that news waiting in the line of the Marshall movie theater. Like I was going to a movie that night, and we were in line to buy tickets, and somehow we heard it right there. And I guess I wasn't with you if you heard it somewhere else. So
yeah,
I don't know for sure what movie or who I was with, but that's how I feel like I remember hearing about that and being shocked.
I have no recollection of his death or where I was. So.
Well, I remember not being totally shocked or surprised because we knew that he had attempted it, or there was something serious that happened a few weeks earlier. And so it was like, and plus he had all these suicidal songs like I Hate Myself and Want to Die. That's kind of a, one of those signs when they write a song called I Hate Myself and Want to Die. That's one of the things to look for, I guess. But but anyway, I wasn't totally shocked, and I remember hearing about it. I was sad, but not surprised. But I do remember going to college, and this was about the most transformative year of my life, just because I really loved high school and everything. I had a lot of great friends, and I was really blessed. But for me, I think it was really good for me as a person to just get away, get out of the small town, and just kind of meet a whole lot of new people. It did a lot for my own confidence. In high school, as you guys both know, I was absolutely terrible with women. I had no confidence, nothing like that at all. I couldn't hardly talk to them. But then and part of that is that when you're in high school, especially in a small town, as I was kind of looking back and thinking about this, and it's like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. When you're in a small town and you like ask a girl out or something like that, and it doesn't go well, it will ruin you for your whole life, right? It's like then when you get to college, it's like, well, nobody knows anybody as much,
Right.
and so it's like so many people. It's like, well, if you screw it up, just try again next week, right? So,
Right. Everybody
uh,
knows everybody in the small town, and yeah, you're gonna be talked about, for at least a week or two, and you know, yeah, everybody knows everybody. And yeah, you go off to college, and even in Morris, where I headed off to for college, very small campus, um, still a heck of a lot bigger than our small, 200 student high school,
yeah,
215 maybe, So yeah,
yep,
definitely a
yep,
bigger
55
situation.
people in our class. So, but it was a lot of fun. Actually enjoyed going to parties, and I wasn't much of a partier in high school. The first big party that I went to, or my first experience with alcohol, Brad, was at your house on the Thanksgiving weekend party. But
Also,
that's
that's the party that I was
That's
mentioning where
yeah,
Joe might have.
Joe and Ben.
Unfortunately, they had an
Okay.
excuse to not let him be on the basketball team. So
Right.
That was technically in '93, so we won't dive too much into that one now. Um, but I do want to transform over to the topic that I wanted to bring now. Going back and forth, I remember driving back and forth a lot from home to college on some weekends and stuff like that. I was just in a car a lot, so I had a pretty good rotation of CDs that I used to play and listen to. At the top of that list was the Nirvana Unplugged in New York album. That was the one that I could listen to over and over again, never ever get sick of it. I knew every word, could just sing along to it. That's the thing about this album, is that you could actually hear the lyrics, you could understand what he was saying, and it was just really good that way. It wasn't like, it wouldn't give you a headache after listening to it for too long or anything like that. Just to me, this was like the perfect album. It was the last big recording of his life, actually. All the songs are great. I think they tie together perfectly. It's really hard for me to believe, as I did the research on this one. Basically everybody thought this was going to be a failure, except for Kurt Cobain himself. Dave Grohl didn't have a lot of confidence in it. MTV wanted them to do more of their big hits, which I'm so glad they didn't, because that's what made this album kind of its own. And for me, the best songs on this CD were Plateau, Lake of Fire, Where Did You Sleep Last Night, which is just off the charts good, and All Apologies. But all of the songs were just fantastic. The music is really quite beautiful when you think about it, or when you really listen to it. And the unique thing about it is that Cobain, he may not be a technically great singer in the sense that, some of the notes are off key, and I think deliberately off key at times, because that's just how his voice was and how he sang. But for this album and for other albums too, sometimes it was the imperfections that made it a lot better, actually, and it
sometimes
kind of
they
brought the
called it
emotion out.
perfectly imperfect.
Who did?
I
Who
said
said that?
sometimes they just call that perfectly
Okay.
imperfect.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think back to on the Nirvana album, or on the Nevermind album, he screws up once. If you listen to the song Polly, he starts in early on one of the notes where he says Polly said, and that was a mistake, but they said keep that in there because it just like added more flavor to it. I don't know, but that song, Where Did You Sleep Last Night? Wow, what a great finish. It's probably the most perfect performance live of all time. The way that it just sneaks up on you, and then like almost scares you at the end. I like Neil Young's description of it when he said that Cobain sounded like a werewolf, and it just kind of felt like it too. Um, it was interesting that they had hardly even rehearsed it at all. It's like one of those things when you hear like Dave Grohl quote that they really didn't put that much into it, and it's like, come on, it's like you thought this was not going to be perfect. It's like how could you even think that? But like it was the first time that Grohl had ever actually played with brushes, the brush sticks. Which
Yep.
you guys are both drummers.
Yep,
so
I have played with brush sticks before.
But Dave Grohl never did, apparently. So
I wonder if he ever played with those plexiglass bouncy drumsticks that we all had in middle school.
He actually
Remember
shattered a
Seth
fluorescent
Vanderwoody
light once.
bouncing that thing and hitting the light and breaking the light?
Seth, I think you better go to the principal's office. um, the sweater that he's wearing, I've actually seen that sweater in person. A couple of years ago, we went to Seattle. We saw it's on display at the Pop Culture Museum, which is a great museum. I highly recommend it. It's got like a big Nirvana display, an even bigger Pearl Jam display. That's almost, I don't know the exact dimensions of it, but it feels like it's about the size of a basketball court. When you go in there, it's so big, and it's all like got all these displays, for Pearl Jam and some Nirvana, but they make a bigger deal out of Pearl Jam in that museum. But Dave Grohl had said that that Cobain wanted to bring this down to Leonard Cohen level, which I thought was a really interesting comparison. If you're familiar with Leonard Cohen and some of his work, he did the Hallelujah song, which you would never associate Kurt Cobain with Leonard Cohen. You would never think that. Who would even, before this particular album? It's like, how do you even come up with that? The creativity that's involved. But Cobain was like really super nervous about it. He only wanted people he knew in the front row because he was just like, I think Brad had even told me that, and maybe you're going to comment on this, but Bobcat Goldthwait was one of his best friends.
That Kurt Cobain and Bobcat Goldthwait were like great friends.
I have heard that, I believe, from Pete himself. On.
Yeah, you heard one of those lost episodes.
Yes, I did mention that.
Episodes. Yes,
I think we should just throw in, since you brought that up, there are some people that might have heard our first episodes that are no longer on here, and we already talked about Nirvana once, but we're going to redo those years later after our little reboot. So that's why we thought we could do Nirvana again here, and then when we do 1991 over again someday, we'll do a different topic at that point. Sure. So that's just in case there's anybody that's been with us all 4 episodes,
So I do remember Pete, telling about Bobcat and Kurt having that friendship, kind of an odd pairing, I would think, if just on the face of it. But
that would be a fun party to go to.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, partying, drinking with Cobain and Bobcat Goldthwait. But the design of the set was perfect too. That was basically Cobain's idea. He wanted it dark and I don't know what, macabre almost. And they said, "Oh, you want it to be like a funeral?" And he said, "Yes, exactly." Now, I don't think, and based on everything that I've read, he did not intend for this to be his last performance. He wasn't like, okay, I'm going to go commit suicide, so this is how I want to go out. It's just how it all came together. And after he did die, then MTV just kind of kept replaying this special. And that's how the CD became more and more popular. And as Brad said, the CD actually wasn't released until about a year after it was filmed on MTV, or it aired on MTV. Then they
timeline. So they recorded this on November 18th of 1993, and then it aired on MTV December 16th of that year. So he kills himself on April 5th of 94.
Yep.
And then finally this album is released for people on November 1st of 94. Bringing up that, though, so he's an artist, and so he's more of an artist than just music. Like, he did all kinds of other art things as well. But so setting that stage the way he did, it doesn't mean he's going to go kill himself. But that's his art. That's his style. Is going to be kind of darker, and actually I find it quite, the sweater and the flowers and the candles. I mean, it's actually really pretty, is what I thought it looked like.
It is.
When you watch it.
Yeah. Look, very intimate.
It all fits together perfectly.
But as far as his mindset that you brought up, so I read some stuff about this, and so when Nirvana started, most of us would think of them as a 3-piece, but by this time they had added Pat Smear, who's now in our new favorite band, the Foo Fighters. But he's just a fun, happy guy who constantly smiles, and according to Dave Grohl, he just really transformed the band and made everybody happy again, because they had obviously been through a lot already at this point.
Mhm.
and adding Pat Smear had really kind of seemingly brought the band to a happier place again, which kind of makes it even more tragic that it couldn't last. But I think at the time they recorded this, they were probably in a pretty good place, and Kurt himself might have even been in a pretty good place too. So it
Well,
wasn't like he was planning to end everything there.
when I was watching this concert back, to me it was kind of interesting how it started out and everything is very subdued um, and low key, and then as it went on, you could see the band members just kind of loosen up, get a little more, um, a little more fun with the audience and things like that. There was a point in there where somebody started playing "Sweet Home Alabama." There are people yelling, "Play Freebird." It was kind of fun because with the beginning, I did notice, where Pat Smear was sitting, and he was the only one smiling. And
He's always
I just wrote a note down that the new guy didn't get the memo about all the angst. He was the one guy on the screen who was just ear to ear grinning, and everybody else is very subdued, with the candles, and it's very low key. But I did find it interesting as it went on how he did loosen up quite a bit and started that interplay with the audience and the other.
I'm curious, Gif, since we don't have exactly the same taste in music, just what your overall opinion of this album is, because obviously me and Pete both love it, but what do you think of it?
Again, I'd be with Pete. I think it's a very good representation of a lot of the songs off the 3 albums. I did write down that my favorite was the Lead Belly. Where Did You Sleep Last Night? I thought it was a great rendition of it.
It's unanimous then.
And also, obviously, All Apologies is, that's a beautiful version of that song. But also, The Man Who Sold the World, I thought just a great take on a Bowie song. He just did it so well. And again, like you said, Pete, you wouldn't expect this. I can see why people thought it would be maybe a disaster, but it's just a wonderful stripped down showing of their talents as musicians. And I just really enjoyed re-listening to it again.
And one thing, did either of you guys watch it this time around? Or did,
now, I don't think you can watch the actual whole thing unless you put it together on YouTube. I could just find individual songs at a time to watch.
On YouTube, you can just run it from start to finish.
Oh, you could. I
must go from one to the next to the next to the next. That's what I did for the.
Now, I didn't watch it since for a really long time, and so I just listened to the album again. Now, in the album, at the very end of Where Did You Sleep Last Night, the audience starts clapping right away. But I think that might have been cut in there because I thought that I had heard that they were just dead silent while Cobain gets up and just lights a cigarette and walks off stage. Because there's a moment there where
I don't remember, because I did actually watch that one, and I remember he walks off and he actually stops and signs some autographs for some kids.
Yeah.
And I don't remember how the applause came in though. So
because I remember, I think it was that documentary. Was that what's the name of that documentary, Brad?
Which one?
There were at least 2, but it's the one.
Heck.
Yeah.
Master of Heck. That's not it. It's
Montage of
Heck.
But I thought that's where it said that he thought actually that they had blown it, it was a terrible performance of it. When in fact the audience was just so blown away and shocked by the performance that they didn't react right away. So it was there's a moment in there.
Here's the quote that I have, and it came from Bobcat Goldthwait, but other people I think as well. So MTV, there's another thing that they didn't do. They wanted them to probably go back out and do an encore, and they didn't do that. And when they're backstage, they're talking about that song, and this is what Bobcat said. I remember being backstage, and I'm not sure if it was MTV or the management. They were trying to get them to come back out to do more songs. And I remember saying to Kurt, well, I don't think you're really going to top that. I think you're done. I remember saying that. What was the point? And I totally agree. I mean, that's like the greatest ending to a concert you could have. A song that, I mean, it's an older, like standard, like type song. I don't know.
It's like an old folk song, isn't it? Or
Right.
something?
I looked up Lead Belly, and and it sounds kind of creepy, and it's this way old song. But I wonder how many people actually know it. But even if you never heard it, it's just like the way they performed it. It just blows you away.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just love it so much.
And that
My
last
favorite-
image of him, I just remember, I remember watching it, and I remember that last image of him as he hits that last note and finishes it off. It's like, wow, that blows you away.
There was a couple moments where, and it might have been right around there, where it's zoomed in on him pretty close, and like his eyes are closed for most of it, because I mean, you kind of have, but like they open once, and it's like he stops and thinks and collects himself, and then he brings it out again for that. Oh my God, you can
Very
just see it there.
Yeah, it's very.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite song on the album. But my other favorite, since you brought up some of yours, it's half the album is covers, but they're all like these unknown covers that nobody would know, and that's why MTV wasn't a big fan. But so the 3 songs, Plateau, Omi, and Lake of Fire, which are all by the Meat Puppets, which I listened to those too, and they don't sound nearly as good by them. But
it's pretty high bar there, though.
3 songs are just, I could listen to those over and over again. Lake of Fire and Plateau, well, all 3 of them, I can't even pick one. They're just so good, and he's so perfect for them, the way he sings those songs. The one song on the album that I don't really skip it, but I used to kind of skip it, and it's funny because you brought it up, Giff, because it's the one that whenever I hear people talk about it, it seems like everybody's favorite song is The Man Who Sold the World. And to me, that's like my least favorite song on the whole album, I think. It's just something
really?
about it just doesn't really do anything for me. And it's okay. It's fine. But if I had to pick a least favorite, that's actually probably what I would go with, and the one that I kind of skipped back when I started listening to it. So
hence
I don't even know if I have one I consider least favorite. I can't even pick one that I can say, I don't like that. I do like that song.
But then the Meat Puppets, so this helped them, of course, too. They had their one big hit in the 90s, was called Backwater, and it came out shortly after this, and that was a great song. So, this helped them even get a little more acclaim, and that's really cool how they would work in these random things like that. And they trusted that it was going to be good when nobody else probably wanted them to do it. It's all that art. It's that vision.
He was a genius.
And so what I was going to say about this is that we've talked in the past about, they only had 3 full-length albums. And what would have happened to Nirvana if he hadn't died? Would they have maintained? What would have they become? And I think we've kind of agreed that they maybe wouldn't have lasted very long. They would have been great, but maybe not just lasted. But when I look back at this album again this time and think about it, I almost feel like this showed what they were capable of and how they could switch directions. And I love that this is so different from the other albums. And I love that they did all these covers, because usually an Unplugged is just going to be like different versions of your hits. And it's like, I don't really care to hear that. I mean, I'll watch the performance, but like, I'm not going to put that in and listen to it like on a CD.
Right.
But this one, it's like its own standalone album. So there's a few songs that of theirs, but it's so different from the rest.
Yes.
And it becomes like we're so lucky that they did it that way, because it gave us a little bit more to their catalog that, we wouldn't have had without this. And that's why I love this album and love returning to it every once in a while. So
yeah, absolutely. No, I don't have anything else to add there. Gifford, do you have anything more to add?
No, I don't think so. The only one thing about the Meat Puppets, did anybody else think that they looked like a pro wrestling tag team before you hit the gym?
I guess I did. Actually, even when I've watched it, I haven't really paid attention to what they look like. So I
gotta go back and watch it again.
I should know more about that.
All right. Well,
you want to talk about our 5 favorite Nirvana songs and wrap up this portion of our episode?
We can do that. So, Brad, why don't you start with your top 5 Nirvana songs of all time? Now, this is not just on this record or on this CD or anything. It's all-time Nirvana.
All right, so again, it's not as hard as some other bands because they don't have as many songs, but there are so many good ones that it's still really hard for a fan like me to pick. So my number 5, I had a lot of different ideas. I ended up putting "Smells Like Teen Spirit" there because I mean it is just undeniably great, and even though I've heard it a million times, I thought I couldn't really quite decide on a 5th song, so that just should go there because why not? My number 4 is "Sliver," which is a Rarity song that I love, and it's all about going to Grandma's house and not wanting to be there and trying to go back home, and it's just a fun song, and he kills it. My number 3 is off their first album, Bleach, and it is "Love Buzz," and that's another just awesome sound. It just kind of hits you right away if you've never heard that one. So my brother, like, he likes Nirvana and but he's not a huge into rock music quite as much as me. But I remember we were listening to this one day at a tailgate before a Gopher game, and this song is on, and he totally just stopped and like, wait, is this Nirvana? And like, you could just tell how this song hit him, and it's an awesome song. Number 2, I kind of cheated. I put 2 songs from Nevermind on there, "Breed" and "Stay Away," because they're both awesome, just fast-paced rock songs that I love to run to, and they always are on my running list, and I can't really pick one over the other, so I love both. And then for number 1, I did put "Where Did You Sleep Last Night," because I just every time I hear it, my skin crawls, my hair on my arms it's one of those songs that every time I hear it, it just hits me. So I figured I'll put that at number 1.
All right.
Excellent.
Right.
Excellent list. Gifford?
Well, I'm pretty boring because I'm not as familiar
No,
with
you're not.
Nirvana.
I billed you in the last episode as a dynamo of a human, so that's the opposite of boring. Don't let me down.
Mine's
Gifford.
gonna be
Perspective on music, Gifford. That's good.
yeah. Well, my perspective is if I'm lucky enough to be on later episodes, I was more of an album buying, an album buying kind of guy in high school, and of course then it was country, and so with Nirvana, obviously, coming on in '91, I'm familiar, but it's not top of my list. But my top 5, I have number 5, I have "Rape Me." Number 4, "All Apologies." Number 3, "Come As You Are." Number 2, I have "Lithium." And number 1, I have "Smells Like Teen Spirit."
Yes.
That song, I remember where I was the first time I heard it.
Yeah.
I was in the back seat of my brother's car on our way to Marshall. I don't remember what it was for, but that song came on, and you knew that everything had changed.
I thought you were going to say you were making out with somebody when you said you're in the back seat of somebody's car.
No.
It's funny that you say that because I remember that too, and I brought it up on our previous 91 episode that we had done. I was working in the corner store where I worked for my mom, and they played it on the radio, and I maybe had heard it once somewhere kind of in the background, but like I heard it that day, and I'm like, I mean, right away I knew I'm going to go buy this CD. That this song is just awesome. And
it hits you like a ton of bricks.
Picture myself hearing it there too, just like you said.
We'll have more on Brad's. We'll have more on Brad's career at the convenience store in the Clerks episode.
Oh yeah, Clerks, baby.
Right. Well, and for me, like my favorite band growing up as far as rock was Def Leppard. And Def Leppard, and the hair bands were on their way out. And to me, that song, "Smells Like Teen Spirit," signaled that sea change away from hair band, spandex, and to the, grunge, which I will say I do blame grunge. And the fashion, for the fashion of the time, it always made me mad that when I was in college, your prime years for picking up women, and they were all covered in a heavy layer of flannel, and that always
I love
did upset
flannel,
me. So, but those are my top 5 Nirvana songs.
But that's not a boring list at all. Don't.
but they got a lot of
It
airplay.
means because it's a lot of the bigger songs people know.
Right.
There's
Yeah,
nothing
a
wrong
lot
with
of
that.
airplay on those songs.
There's nothing wrong with that at all. So, my top five, starting with number 5, would be "Come as You Are." And one just little interesting tidbit about that is that last year we took a trip out to Seattle, and we went out to Aberdeen, Washington, which is where he grew up, and we actually drove by his childhood home. And as you come into town, that's what the sign says. The road sign says, "Welcome to Aberdeen. Come as you are." So I thought that was just kind of cool. But really, around town, there's not a lot else to promote it. And if you weren't looking for his house, you wouldn't even know it was there. I found it on like Google Maps and how to get there, and so that's what we did. And it's just a little yellow house. It doesn't look like anything, different, and there's no signs out in front of it. I guess the guy that owns it now did buy it like as a collector, and he paid like $500,000 for it. But it's not, it's obviously not worth that normally. So, but that was just one interesting little tidbit about that song. My next one is "Heart Shaped Box." I think we've talked a little bit about that already. "Molly's Lips" I've got on my list, which is a great one because it doesn't sound that as much like a Nirvana song. It's a little more poppy. It's a little more fun, almost like Brad said with the other one. But this one, for me, it's a fun song.
I love that song. That could be on my list. And that's a cover, too. It's a cover of the Vaselines, which is also a band they covered on the album with the song "Jesus Don't Want Me for a Sunbeam." So there's a connection there.
Definitely. "Where Did You Sleep Last Night," which we've discussed. And my top one is "Lithium." That one is just, I think, is the most fun. I love the drum solo in that one, or solos. A lot of fun. So that would be my top 5 Nirvana songs.
All right.
Wraps up my list.
You want to wrap up this portion of our 1994 episode, Pete?
I think we can. So, as Brad stated earlier, we are going to a little bit of a different format. So, this is going to conclude our first 1994 episode. We are going to have a total of 4, but we're breaking them into smaller tidbits. Stay tuned for our next episode, which will be released the following week or next week. And we will be talking about Friends. We're going to be shifting gears a little bit from Nirvana and going to Friends.
Gifford, will you be joining us for that one too?
I sure hope so, fellas. I'm great. A big fan of Friends.
We'll give you a second chance, Gifford.
Thank you.
We'll give you a mulligan.
I'll mess it up even worse next time.
All right. Well, that wraps up our show. Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Yearbook. Be sure to visit our Twitter page and follow us. That is @PopYearbook. And follow us on Facebook. Thank you very much.
Bye.
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 Standing on my own 2 feet. No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your son is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. Next time, tell me on my back. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared, but there's nothing I can do.